All right. Thank you so much for your patience this evening. We all have to love technology a little bit. Again, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Lindsay Hill. I am with the Texas Workforce Commission's Child Care and Early Learning Division, and I'm the Quality Initiatives Manager here. Please enter your child care program name and city into the chat. Lets us know who all we have joining us today. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available for future reference. So if there are folks that you know that were unable to attend or are unable to access the webinar because it is full, please know that that recording will be shared and posted for future reference. Today, we will be reviewing the proposed Texas Rising Star entry-level designation process per proposed rules with you all. To honor our time, we are asking that you please place your questions in the chat. These will be logged and potentially turned into an FAQ to share with you all. Here is our agenda for this evening. We will review the rule timeline and talk through entry-level designation requirements, points threshold, what it means as a new provider, what it means for a current provider, the timeline, some frequently asked questions, a waiver, and suspension status. So there's a lot to cover tonight.
Lindsay, can I jump in real quick?
Sorry, yes.
So I just wanted to note for everyone, we have over 500 on this call, and we will try to answer as many questions as we can. However, we only have an hour, and I expect we probably won't be able to get to all of them. But as Lindsay said, we are logging everything entered in the chat, and this session is being recorded, as she said, and we will be turning that around and making that public. So both the recording as well as a set of questions and answers, so that anything that we missed tonight will get addressed.
Thank you, Allison. Again, here's the timeline for the proposed rules. As you can see, we are in the finalizing stages of the rules. Please note that we have had 2 previous public comment periods during the entire rules timeline. TWC received comments from various stakeholders and reviewed those comments to determine if any final revisions should be made to what was originally proposed. These final rules will go in front of the Commission Tuesday, September 13th, and once approved, will be effective on Monday, October 3rd. We will cover each of the following topics as we overview the entry-level designation. Let's begin with the basic requirements and the points threshold. Providers licensed or registered with the Texas Health and Human Services Commission's Child Care Regulation, or CCR, department are eligible to be considered for entry level. Your program can have an initial or full permit. However, your program cannot be on any corrective action with CCR. Those regulated by Child Care Regulation will have up to their most recent 12 months licensing history reviewed, meaning if your program only has 6 months, then 6 months is reviewed. If your program has 5 years, only the most recent 12 months is reviewed. For every high weighted deficiency that is cited within this review, your program will receive 5 points. And for every medium high deficiency that is cited, your program will receive 3 points. If that total exceeds 75 points, your program is not eligible for entry-level designation. Please note that programs regulated by the U.S. military are also eligible for entry-level. So let's talk through those of you who are not currently a Child Care Services or CCS provider with your local board. How do you become one effective October 3rd? You must meet basic requirements prior to signing a CCS provider agreement. That means you must be either licensed or registered by CCR and not on corrective action with child care regulation. When reviewing your licensing history, again, up to the most recent 12 months, you must have 75 or fewer total points. If your program meets basic requirements, you have up to 24 months to obtain Texas Rising Star certification at a 2-star or higher level. If your program does not meet basic requirements, your program cannot sign a CCS provider agreement until your program does, even if a family is waiting to be placed there. Let's work through a few mock examples to better explain how a new provider would be reviewed for eligibility. Here's our first new provider seeking a CCS provider agreement. This provider has an initial permit that was issued from licensing on June 1st of 2022. Licensing history, when reviewed on October 1st, shows 4 months of history. Within that 4 months, there are 12 deficiencies total. 3 are high deficiencies. Remember, these get 5 points each. There are 2 medium-high deficiencies. They get 3 points each. There are 5 medium deficiencies and 2 low deficiencies. No points are assigned to them. That means there's a total of 21 points for this provider. They are entry-level designated. Let's do another. This provider has a full permit that was issued from licensing on June 1st of 2001. When reviewing their history on October 1st, it will show the most recent 5 years, but we only are looking at the most recent 12 months, so October 1 to October 1. There are 6 deficiencies noted, 1 being a high deficiency at 5 points, and 2 medium-high deficiencies at 3 points each. There are 3 low deficiencies which receive no points. That's a total of 11 points. They are also entry-level designated. Here's one more. This provider has a renewed initial permit that was issued from child care regulation on June 1st of 2022. Licensing history reviewed on June 1 shows 10 months of CCR history. Within those 10 months, they're showing 46 deficiencies total. 10 are high at 5 points each, 12 at medium high at 3 points each, 6 medium low, 15 medium, and 3 low deficiencies. Those all are no points. So when we look at those high and medium high, that's a total of 86 points. That exceeds our 75-point threshold limit. Therefore, they are not entry-level designated. This provider would not be able to become a CCS provider and would need to wait until they meet the requirements. I'm going to pause here for a moment to see if there are any questions regarding a new CCS provider, someone who is not currently CCS, becoming one with our new entry-level designation.
Hi, Lindsay. Yes, there are a few questions here. So we've got one provider asking what exactly will be reviewed, and then another along the same lines, what are the definitions of medium and high deficiencies?
So when we're looking at your licensing history, we're going to the public website, which shows your program and your compliance with licensing's minimum standards. There is an option there to see all deficiencies cited within a time frame of up to 5 years. So when we look at that, we'll look at only the most recent 12 months. So if we're viewing that on October 1st of 2022, we'll look back and see how many deficiencies were cited from October 1 of 2021 to October 1 of 2022. It shows a list, and in that list, it'll tell us if licensing has weighted that deficiency at a high, a medium low, or a low weight. And so we would only be counting those that are weighted at a high or a medium high weight.
Thanks. And there's another question here. that someone is currently working on an agreement. Does it have to be completed with CCS prior to 10/1/22?
So this requirement for entry-level designation and the points, meeting the points threshold, will become effective when our rules are approved from the commission, which would be effective 10/3. So if you are working on a provider agreement right now with your board, this is not a requirement, but we will talk about those of you who do have a CCS provider agreement already in place and what would occur for you all effective October 3rd.
Okay, and another question is, what is the definition of entry level?
So entry level is it's this level prior to our certification levels for Texas Rising Star. We were mandated under legislation to have all of our providers who are providing the child care services program, our TWC CCS scholarship funding for child care, to be working in and towards certification. So we created this entry level to be that stepping stone into becoming certified with Texas Rising Star.
Okay, and I'll share just one more right now. Does the outcome of deficiencies, is the outcome of deficiencies taken into account or just the citing?
Just the citing. So I think if they're asking about whether the correction was fixed or not, that is not a factor. We look at what is cited on the website.
One final question. I know I said that a minute ago. What would happen if we are not entry level designated?
We will talk about that. If you're a current CCS provider and you're not found at entry level designation, we'll talk about that.
So
If you are a new CCS provider, like you're trying to become or you're wanting to provide CCS services and you do not meet the entry level points threshold eligibility, then you would not be able to sign a contract and serve our children.
So Lindsay, can I jump in here?
Sure.
I think there's a little bit of panic maybe going on, and I just want to address that and kind of allay some concerns. So this new entry level does go into effect when the rules go into effect, so in October. But what Lindsay has walked you through shows you how that is figured out, and it's based on your licensing history for the last 12 months. And we've done some analysis of licensing's data, and our determination has shown that the vast majority of current childcare providers that are providing subsidy are going to meet this entry level threshold. So first off, I want you to know that it's unlikely that you would get knocked out. You would really have to have a lot of deficiencies that are not just any deficiencies, only high and medium high deficiencies. And then I also want to point out, Lindsay hasn't been able to get to this part yet, but the full, reaching full certification in Texas Rising Star, while that is a new requirement because of this legislation, we have a 2-year ramp up to get you there. So you have, until like September 30th of 2024 to attain that at least 2-star certification. And we also are going to be really injecting a lot of resources into the system to help support our childcare subsidy programs to move in that direction. So I think maybe we want to let her kind of get a little further in the presentation, because I think some of the questions that are coming in they're going to be answered. So I hope that helps to kind of let you, take a deep breath and let us proceed in presenting some more of the information here. And then we'll definitely answer more questions.
Definitely. Thank you, Allison. And for anyone who would be wondering, while we'll also be sharing the recording of this webinar, we'll also share the slides as well. So let's talk about those of you who are currently a CCS provider and will be screened effective October 3rd. So for those of you who are currently a CCS provider that do not meet the entry-level points threshold, an allowance will be given. That allowance is 6 months to become compliant. This is the only allowance that is made for this group of providers. If your program falls into this category, you have until March 31st of 2023 to comply. Otherwise, your CCS agreement will end. And I can't reiterate enough what Allison just noted, that the vast majority of you all are already meeting entry-level points threshold eligibility requirements. So this is a very, very small group of providers that fall into this situation here. So let's dive into the 24-month timeline designated entry-level providers will have to obtain Texas Rising Star certification. Here's the full 24-month timeline stepped out for programs who currently have a CCS provider agreement. We're going to walk through each step. Our first deadline is October 3rd, 2022. Local Workforce Solution Boards will officially review the child care regulation history for each of their current CCS programs they have a contract with to determine if the program meets entry-level designation, or ELD on the screen. If your program meets entry-level designation, you will be given a deadline of September 30th, 2024 to be certified as at least 2-star, and the board will provide a mentor to support your program in this achievement. If your program does not meet entry-level designation, the program will be provided an allowance to remain CCS, and the board will provide a mentor to support as applicable, and you will be given a deadline of March 31st, 2023 for compliance of entry level. The second deadline of March 31st, 2023 is only for those programs that were given that allowance. If your program was given this allowance to provide CCS while not meeting entry-level designation, and the program is now in compliance with entry-level designation, you will be given a deadline of September 30th, 2024 to be certified as at least 2-star. If your program was given an allowance to provide CCS while not meeting entry-level designation, and your program still does not meet entry-level designation by this date of March 31st, 2023, the CCS provider agreement will be terminated, and any CCS children in care will be transferred to another provider within 2 weeks of the deadline. The third deadline is September 30th, 2023, 1 year since entry-level designation has gone into effect. Local Workforce Solutions Boards will conduct a Texas Rising Star initial certification screening form for your program to determine if you meet initial certification eligibility for Texas Rising Star. If so, an assessment will be scheduled to occur prior to September 30th, 2024. If not, the program will have the remaining 12 months to comply. However, another check of initial screening eligibility will be conducted by March 31st, 2024. Remember, compliance for this review means meeting the eligibility and screening requirements of an initial Texas Rising Star applicant. This review can occur sooner than September 30th, 2023, if your program is ready to pursue certification. March 31st, 2024 is the fourth deadline. If your program did not meet initial certification eligibility at the third deadline, September 30th, 2023, the board will conduct another Texas Rising Star initial certification screening form for the program at the 18th month of the 24-month timeframe to determine if you meet initial certification eligibility for Texas Rising Star. If so, A Texas Rising Star initial assessment will be scheduled to occur prior to September 30th, 2024. If not, the program has the remaining 6 months to comply. However, you may not receive new CCS family referrals during this timeframe unless your program is located in a childcare desert or serves an underserved population and is approved by TWC to accept new family referrals. Again, the deadline to comply with initial certification eligibility for Texas Rising Star is September 30th, 2024. The final deadline is that September 30th, 2024 date, 2 years since the effective date. If your program was given the full 24-month timeframe to comply with initial certification eligibility, the board will conduct a final review of screening for your program to determine if you are able to be assessed for Texas Rising Star. If so, a Texas Rising Star initial assessment will be scheduled as soon as possible, ideally within the next 3 months. So by December 31st, 2024. If not, the CCS provider agreement will be terminated and any CCS children in care will be transferred to another provider within 2 weeks of this deadline. So here are some questions to ask yourself as you review your program's childcare regulation licensing history and participation in entry level. What is my score? And do I currently meet the entry level designation points threshold or not? If my program doesn't meet the points threshold, will any of these citations fall off or come off out of the 20, my apologies, I will restate. If my program does not meet the points threshold, will any of the citations fall off or out of the 12-month screening timeframe, causing my program to now meet the points threshold? Another question you might ask, if my program is close to not meeting the entry-level designation points threshold, what might I try to work on with my mentor to support us in licensing compliance? Does my board have any orientation or overview sessions on entry-level designation that I can attend to learn more? And lastly, you might ask, what are the initial eligibility requirements of Texas Rising Star, and does my program already meet them? Here are the answers to a few frequently asked questions. What happens if your program exceeds the points threshold within their 24 months of working towards certification? If this happens, you will remain on the path to certification, and any impacts will be placed within your final 6 months, meaning you will not receive any new family referrals. Can your program be screened for Texas Rising Star initial certification sooner than September 30th, 2023? Yes. Any provider can be screened prior to the dates noted for compliance, especially if you are ready to move to certification. Is there a waiver for special situations? Yes. Let's discuss those now. An entry-level designated provider who does not meet eligibility for Texas Rising Star initial certification by the end of their initial 24 months can be granted an extension waiver for up to 3 years, which is determined by TWC, if you fall into one of the following situations. If you are located in a childcare desert, I had dessert on the mind, located in a childcare desert, which is defined in our Texas Labor Code and in our childcare rules, or serving an underserved population as determined by TWC. If you are unable to meet certification requirements due to a declared emergency or disaster, or you're unable to meet certification requirements due to conditions that are outside of the provider's control. Your local workforce development board would submit to TWC the request on your behalf to consider a waiver for any eligible provider. For those of you who are currently Texas Rising Star certified and your program falls below the 2-star certification level after October 3rd, 2022, you will be placed in a suspension status for a minimum of 6 months and up to 15 months. You must meet initial certification eligibility by the end of the 15 months to retain your CCS provider agreement, and childcare rules that indicate no new high or medium high deficiencies have been newly cited. You must have a consecutive 6 months of what we would call clean licensing history. No new high or medium high deficiencies cited within that 6 months. While in suspension, your program is not eligible for entry-level designation, and you must still meet the points threshold requirement. If a provider who is currently certified falls into suspension status and is unable to come back as certified at a 2-star or higher by the end of their 15-month timeframe, you are not eligible to be placed into entry-level designation. The provider agreement is terminated and children in care would be transferred. You can return to CCS and provide those services once you have been recertified. Therefore, your program must come back at an initial screening certification level. So we understand that this was a lot of information and many deadlines were noted. Again, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the TWC Childcare and Early Learning website, as well as shared with your local workforce boards so that you all can listen back and share with those who were unable to attend. TWC is also working on some print materials to support the sharing of entry level, its requirements, and its deadlines. Should you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to your local Workforce Solutions office. And if you're unsure who or how to contact your board, go to www.texaschildcaresolutions.org and complete the information within the Contact Us tab. So I will pause here now and see what questions we might be able to tackle from the chat box.
Hey, Lindsay, we've got several great questions. And I think, a lot of folks have been asking about, are we required to be Texas Rising Star if we want to continue keeping children with scholarships? So Allison, I don't know if you want to talk again about the legislation and what that means.
Absolutely. So the state legislature that meets every other year, they met in 2021, and this was a piece of legislation that was introduced and gained sponsorship from both the House and the Senate, and was successfully moved forward and became a law. So our role as the Texas Workforce Commission and the lead agency for the child care program is to implement the legislation. So, I did drop in the link to the actual legislations for anyone that wants to take a look at it. And I'm very, very mindful of the fact that you guys have been through a lot in the last 2 years, and that I'm sure this has got to feel really overwhelming. It's part of why we've tried to create, this generous on-ramp to help you get to 2, 3, or 4-star. But again, this is the legislation that was passed, and it's our job to implement it. Very glad that you're putting in all these questions, because this really does help us think about how to operationalize these changes. And I think that's really all I can say about the legislation. Kathy, do you want to speak to what other questions are on here that we should try to tackle tonight?
Absolutely. So got one question that is do providers have to be open a certain time frame to start the TRS certification?
For Texas Rising Star certification, some of the initial eligibility requirements are that you have had at least 12 months of operation, so 12 months of licensing history. That's for Texas Rising Star. For entry level, we do not require a minimum operation time because we will only look back up to the most recent 12 months. But if if you're brand new and you've just opened, you only have a month or two, that's fine for entry level. For Texas Rising Star, we do require a full permit and 12 months of licensing history at minimum.
And another question is, what if I lose certification?
So if you are currently Texas Rising Star certified, once these proposed rules are approved and finalized and we go into effect October 3rd, if you fall below 2-star, you will move into that suspension status. So I'm gonna go back that slide there. You'll fall into the suspension status. So you will no longer receive enhanced rates because you're not at a certified level anymore. But you're not necessarily entry level. You're in this kind of in between. So it's suspension. You will have, at minimum, you must sit out 6 months. And that's to help us just make sure you get the mentoring you need and that you can show some consistent compliance in whatever the situation was that caused you to fall below 2-star. After that 6 months, and if you meet the eligibility to come back in, you can come back in and be certified. You have up until, though, 15 total months to come back. So it does give you some time if something were to happen in those first 6 months, and you kind of have to extend your time a little bit. So it gives you some time to come back. Within that, at that 9th month, so this is where a lot of little deadlines and whatnot is a little hard to explain, but you have the 15 months to come back when you're in suspension. At that 9th month, if you're still not able to come back yet, that's where that impact of no more new family referrals would occur unless you're in a childcare desert or an underserved population that's approved by TWC.
Great. We do have a couple of other questions that I think might help some of those who are not currently part of the Texas Rising Star program. So we've got one that asks, can you give an overview of what it is to be TRS? For example, the duties and of owners or caregivers, the amount of children that are required. And then another along the same lines asks, does TRS conduct home visits?
Okay, so I'm gonna try and give you a really quick overview of Texas Rising Star, but obviously www.texasrisingstar.org is gonna be a great place for information. So we do have certain initial eligibility requirements that I talked about. So you have to have the full permit, you have to have 12 months of licensing history. There are certain licensing standards that you cannot be cited for within those 12 months. You are required to have at minimum, a center director account within the workforce registry or the Texas Early Childhood Professional Development System. And so those are, I'm trying to think of all, you can't be on corrective action with licensing or with your board. There's some other little kind of no tolerance kind of things, but those are the big initial eligibility. So once you meet that, that's kind of what says that you're eligible to participate. Texas Rising Star is obviously, it's a quality rating and improvement system. So we use a hybrid scoring method to determine the quality of care at a 2, 3, or 4-star level. And that is, you're scored on 4 different categories. Category 1 looks at the director and staff's education and training. Category 2 looks at teacher and child interactions. Category 3 is program administration, which includes family engagement, family involvement, as well as your program management. So curriculum, child assessments, compensatory supports. falls into that. And then the fourth category is indoor and outdoor learning environments. Within each of those categories are different measures. Some are applicable only to childcare centers. Some are applicable only to homes. And then some are for everyone. Some of those measures are required. You must meet them. You must comply with them. And others, you'll get points for how, like on the scale of how you meet it. So you can get anywhere from 0 to 3 points. All of those points are mathematically calculated to give you a overall program star level. And based on what star level you are is the reimbursement rate you will receive for any CCS children that you have in care. Hopefully that was not too overwhelming, but a decent enough overview of Texas Rising Star. But again, please visit texasrisingstar.org for more information.
So another question that I wanted to address was, if you're not part of TRS, can you still get grants? And I don't know if you're speaking about the Child Care Relief Fund or Child Care Expansion Initiative Awards. Those are not dependent on participation in the Child Care Services or Texas Rising Star. So you would still be eligible for those awards.
Now, I will add to that, the local workforce development boards that you all work with, they also receive funds that they have set aside to spend on quality activities. Many of you have probably benefited from these funds. They do things like, training for your staff. They may purchase curriculum for your program. And those funds are in state statute. It's the local workforce board that determines how they spend those funds. So they really get to decide who they prioritize, how they prioritize. So I would encourage you to, work with your local board to understand their process for determining need, and share your feedback about what it is you think you need to help you get to or maintain a quality rating in Texas Rising Star.
And I did see someone ask about how do they contact their board. So again, if you'll go to that website that's posted, which is www.texaschildcaresolutions.org, and go to the Contact Us tab, fill that out, and that'll go directly to your board. There's also a Contact Us tab on the Texas Rising Star website as well.
And I will add that link into the chat. Give me just a moment.
So we've got other questions about how to start the process. You did mention going to texasrisingstar.org, correct? And I know that that link is in the chat. Let's
Correct.
see.
And if you're already a CCS provider with your local board, they will be outreaching you as well. If you are not currently a CCS provider with a local board, again, you can go to either of those Contact Us pages to get in touch with your local board.
Okay, most of the questions I'm seeing right now are things that we have gone over. There's a question, is the scholarship amount going to change?
So I can go ahead and take that one, Kathy. So as I think probably most of you are aware, TWC conducts an annual childcare market rate survey. We do have the 2022 survey in hand, and it's just going through approvals. And I expect it will be posted by next week, if not the end of this week. And at the same time, we are also going through our annual process of determining just how many scholarships we can afford to award. And so part of that, that determination is considering how much we're paying for those scholarships. So that process is underway. And I can tell you that we are planning to bring before our commission on September 13th. So that's 2 weeks from today. We are planning to bring forward the proposed targets for how many children we would serve. And that will also include, because they have to go together, it will include the rates and rate changes that we anticipate. Those rate changes would go into effect on October 1st, as they usually do, because that is the beginning of our board's contract year. And so that's when we make them effective. So I, would encourage you to keep an eye on that commission meeting, and that will, we will have more information immediately following that about the impact to childcare rates. And I will also say that if you're not aware, every year since 2018, TWC has increased the maximum reimbursement rates for childcare services. And a couple of years ago, we actually moved to basically peg our rates to the 75th percentile of the market rate survey, which is the recommendation of our federal oversight agency, that's where you should try to be to ensure equal access to the market for families that are receiving subsidies. So while I can't share more details about this year, just know that we're working on it, and more information to come very, very soon.
I did see a question about school age only programs. So we do have and allow school age only programs to be a part of Texas Rising Star. So we do have what we would call 3 different facility types that Texas Rising Star can certify. We have licensed centers, registered or licensed homes, and then before or after school or school age only programs. So there is a specific licensing screening form that we utilize when we are looking at your history, because we do know that licensing does use different rules or minimum standards for each of those facility types. So please note that those are taken into consideration, but all 3 of those facility types are eligible to become Texas Rising Star certified. And there are certain measures that are applicable to only school age programs, as well as the homes and or the centers.
Okay, so I also just want to reinforce that, you've got 2 years to achieve like a star level certification, and you only have to get to 2-star. And many of you may not be aware of, at this point in time, sort of what that includes, but that is primarily the more structural measures of your program. And it's, while it recognizes that you're demonstrating a higher level of quality, reaching 2-star is I think going to be pretty easily attainable for most programs. And then I also want to note, I see we've got tons of questions and comments, and please keep them coming, because like I said, that helps us think through how to operationalize this, and where we have not shared enough information with you guys so that we can get more information out. And then on that note, I also want to note that Zoom has a limit, a participant limit of 500. And we pretty quickly hit that limit. So if you have any colleagues from other programs that were frustrated that they weren't able to listen to this, please share that we, again, we've recorded this and we will be making it publicly available. We will send out an email to everyone that received the invitation with the link. It will also, the link actually where it will live is on our agency TWC's YouTube channel. So if you don't remember anything else, know that you can go search for it on TWC's YouTube channel once we get it published. And again, we will also take all of these questions and get them addressed in writing and turn those around. There are a lot of questions, so it may take us a minute to get that done. And I don't want to put staff on the spot of giving a deadline, a date right now, but we will aim to turn that around as quickly as possible.
I did see a question about just kind of wanting to know a little bit more about Texas Rising Star and kind of what's required once you become certified. So I had mentioned that there were 4 categories. There's category 1, director and staff education and training. Category 2, teacher-child interaction. Category 3, program administration. And category 4, indoor and outdoor learning environments. Once you're assessed initially over all of those categories and measures, each year, so annually, you will be visited for a monitoring, and that's just where the assessor will come in, check in. They'll look at 50% of the classrooms that you serve, as long as there's at least one from each age group that is observed. And they'll kind of it's just a monitoring. So they'll go in, they'll look at the same measures and give you an update of where you are. So that will happen each year. And then on the 3rd year, you will be recertified. So your certification is good for 3 years. And then on that 3rd year, you'll go through a full recertification. All classrooms, all will be observed and assessed. While you are Texas Rising Star certified, we do have more requirements regarding like which licensing deficiencies you can or cannot have. So while entry level kind of looks just globally at the high and medium high that you are cited for, once you're certified, there are certain ones like abuse and neglect, some prohibited punishments, background checks, CPR, first aid. Some of those will have, if you have those specific ones while you're certified as Texas Rising Star, those will have some different impacts. So do want you to be aware of that, that we would in essence want you as Texas Rising Star certified to have an even higher compliance with your child care regulation history.
So Lindsay, I know we're running out of time, but there's one question that I thought was great. What are the benefits of Texas Rising Star aside from remaining on child care services?
Sure. So I think Kathy and Allison kind of mentioned some of these in discussion there. Of obviously, for children that you have in care that are on CCS, you'll receive a higher reimbursement rate, and that goes up at each star level. You're also eligible for specific additional support. So whether that's at your local workforce board or with some of our statewide initiatives, some of them are focused on providers who are Texas Rising Star certified, where they may have priority enrollment, or it may only be specific to those who are certified, whether that's some professional development, some grants or stipends, whether those are materials that you can have in your classroom or on your playground. There are obviously being in our system, you have a mentor that's assigned to you to help you move through not only the process of becoming certified, but they stay with you. So they'll keep working with you to focus on some continuous quality improvement for your program as you move through your annual monitoring reviews as well as recertification. So you kind of have that great relationship with a mentor as support in the certification process. And as I mentioned, each local workforce board, they may have additional grants or activities and initiatives that they do that are focused only on those who are certified. So there is a lot going on that you can have access to while becoming certified, as well as once you're certified.
So I think we're kind of down to just a few more minutes here. Kathy, do you see any other questions that, I mean, there are a lot of questions, but do you see any that we should try to address here in the last couple of minutes?
No, I'm seeing a lot of the same questions that we've already kind of talked about. I think there's question about the governance that's come up a couple of times. So Texas Rising Star is a program under Texas Workforce Commission. And Lindsay's talked a little bit about what that assessment process looks like. It is different from just your minimum standards. So she's talked about the citations and how we look at licensing deficiencies that are based on your minimum standards. I think there's been a little bit of confusion. Lindsay, do you want to clarify that?
I'm sorry, what was the confusion of who governs?
Yeah, I guess about the governance and are we looking at minimum standards or is there another process? And that question's come up a couple of times.
Okay. So as Kathy mentioned, Texas Rising Star falls under Texas Workforce Commission, and child care regulation falls under the Texas Health and Human Services Commission. So two different agencies, but we do look at your child care regulation licensing compliance as part of not only the new entry level designation, but also Texas Rising Star certification. And I've been trying to look over at the chat, but I'm seeing some good testimonials in there. So thank you for sharing for those of you who are currently Texas Rising Star. We appreciate you helping us answer some of those questions and giving a testament to the wonderful things
And
being Texas Rising Star can bring.
I also want to note for everyone who's on the call, I know that, you know, we've said it already, this is overwhelming. It's a lot, and it's a lot at a time that, you know, it's not a good time, right? To be having to think through the implications of this. I do want you to know that my team at TWC, I think it's probably like at least half of them have been in your shoes. They have either been classroom teachers or they have been directors of childcare programs, and they've had to implement directives like this. And so I recognize this is a challenging time and a challenging set of changes, but I hope you all know that we at TWC, as well as your local workforce development boards, we're really, and we coordinate closely with child care regulation, that we are really, we're working hard towards being supportive and helping to get everyone in a place where our young children are receiving really high quality early learning experiences, because I think that's the end goal. That's the North Star for all of us. So again, I think we're probably about ready to wrap up here. We will be capturing all of these questions, and I apologize to anyone whose question we didn't get to, but we will be addressing it again in writing, and we will share out the link to that as well as the link to the recording. The recording will probably be available sooner than the question and answer document. So with that, I'm going to ask Lindsay, were there any closing remarks that you wanted to make?
No, I think you've said it all, that we are here to support, and we know it is a lot. So we will be pushing out as much information as we can and be sharing that with you all as quickly as we're able to get it to our finalization process. So we look forward to talking with you all more. And again, thank you so much for joining us tonight and taking time out of your evening to learn more about entry-level designation.
I have one more thing I just thought of. We have an email address for stakeholder feedback. I'm going to drop it into the chat. It's CCEL, which is short for Childcare and Early Learning, ccel@twc.texas.gov. So if there's anything you didn't get a chance to share tonight, questions or comments, please feel free to shoot an email to that. That goes to my whole team, and we do read those and take those ideas into consideration. And I think that's it. So thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Again, we appreciate your time. Have a great one.